This episode of this podcast contains triggering topics such as self-harm, suicide, severe depression and anxiety, as well as drug use. If you are sensitive to any of these topics, we please advise you to click away. If you are thinking of suicide or know someone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts or depression, please contact the suicide hotline number in your area. 1-800-273-8255 is the National Lifeline hotline number. Remember, no matter how low you feel, there's always someone out there who cares for you. Now, please enjoy this episode of Cinema on the Rocks.
Hi, welcome to Cinema on the Rocks. Today, we are talking about Dear Evan Hansen. My name is Jay.
And my name is Kai.
He's my best friend. I forgot to mention that. Anyway, today we are talking about Dear Evan Hansen, the movie as it came out just this weekend. It is based off of a musical that came out on Broadway several years back. And today I have my best friend here who has seen the musical and loves it dearly. Is that correct?
I do. I really love the musical.
And we're going to talk about it, get into some of that nitty-gritty mental health issues that the movie tries to
kind of gloss over a little bit and
tries to touch on, but doesn't
really
do the best job.
That is very true.
Touches on it a little bit better for general audiences to digest, unlike, say, 13 Reasons Why.
Definitely better than 13 Reasons Why.
But to get into it, we're going to review the Dear Evan Hansen movie, and then we're going to talk about some of the differences between them, because I know nothing and she knows everything, which is absolutely true. And delve into some mental health issues. So that's going to be the darker part of it, but we're going to start off a little bit light. So, after having seen Dear Evan Hansen, what did you think? Without talking about the musical, we're going to talk about strictly the movie.
Strictly the movie. I thought that if you disassociate the movie from the musical, it was decent. They did kind of flub up a little bit with the ages of the actors versus the ages of the characters that they were playing, but I personally would go see it again, and I would really enjoy to go see it again so I could pay a little bit more attention instead of cry.
As for me, I understand the fact that they, most of the time, based off of certain issues that they want to cover in a movie, they don't get younger actors who are actually high school age, because in my head, chances are those actors are actually going through some of that stuff, and to put them into a movie where they are basically having to deal with that in the movie sense would be a really bad combo. That being said, most of the actors in this list who play high school students, they can pass from my part. They could pass as like high school students. But the main person, I understand he does in the musical. He can sing better probably, and they couldn't find someone better who's more age appropriate and looks more the age. Still doesn't make the fact that he's probably the one part that sticks out the most.
I also did a little bit of research on why they cast Ben Platt as Evan again in this movie, and as well as in the original touring of the Broadway cast. His father actually worked on the movie, and the only way that they could get the green light to go ahead and start filming was if they got Ben Platt to play Evan again, because I don't think they thought anybody could do the role justice like he could.
I personally don't know, because I didn't look into it. I don't know if I would see anyone else be able to play his character, or Evan Hansen, as well as him. But I necessarily wouldn't say that there's anyone who can sing as well as him. That would be able to fit the part and sing at the same time and do double duty on that.
I do think that Jordan Fisher, who is the actor who is playing Ben Platt in the touring cast now, or not Ben Platt, Evan, the person who's playing Evan now in the touring cast of the Broadway show, I think he would have done a really good job as well. But seeing as he is touring on Broadway currently, he couldn't really play the role on stage and in a movie.
Although I will say, while they filmed this during the entirety of the pandemic, which is quite surprising, I do think that I heard somewhere that it wasn't necessarily just that the Universal wanted Ben Platt specifically. It was that if they didn't get his son back to play the character, they would not have made it at all. Like saying, you either get him or we don't make this movie for you.
Which is understandable. The attention that the original show got at the very beginning was astronomical because it was such a controversial thing to talk about mental health in a musical sense. Because mental health in teens is something that is a very, very important topic that we do need to talk about more. It's something that needs to be taught, it's something that needs to be taken very seriously, and sadly, in our world that we live in today, it's not. And showing it in musical form and people seeing this movie and seeing that show and even reading the book that it's based off of is just, I think it's going to bring a little bit more light and hopefully um just spread a little bit more awareness to schools, to principals, to teachers that we as a society, as teenagers, as young adults, we struggle with this kind of stuff on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be said. Also, I don't know if they would have made this movie had it not been for the success of The Greatest Showman and La La Land, because those two paved the way for big screen musicals to get pushed out there and think that they could do well, or at least have the confidence to do so. Unfortunately, Universal went with that confidence in the wrong direction by making Cats.
We don't talk about Cats. Cats was Cats was
Sorry,
an interesting
did you
thing.
finally watch Cats?
I have not, but I've seen trailers and I have seen clips from it, and it's an
I rented it
interesting
on
thing.
Redbox when it came out for $1, and I'm gonna be honest, I only watched it for about 40 minutes, and then I said, well, I would not buy that for $1. It was pretty rough, and the fact that people want to see the butthole cut is disgusting.
Yeah, that's kind of gross.
But
So,
getting back on topic here, I will say that there is one thing that I know is part of the story of Dear Evan Hansen, but I won't say that it didn't draw my attention away from the story, is having him with that cast on like almost the entire film.
well, I mean, the cast was a very, very big part of the show, and it does signify what happened and why he got that cast, even though they don't really explain it until towards the end.
Yeah, I mean I get that. Um, Before we delve in any further, though, for anyone who doesn't know what Dear Evan Hansen is about, without saying the entirety of what the story is, what's the best way you could sum up like someone who doesn't know anything about this would be able to draw them into it?
I would say that it is a musical, obviously,
Right.
about a teenager who goes through, I don't want to say normal, but it is almost normal at this point, teenage anxiety and depression and stuff that people struggle with on a daily basis. And in the format that it is, that it's just a musical based on mental health and mental illness and trying to get over that, as well as finding a more perfect, I say perfect loosely, a more perfect reality.
Right. So I'm reading an article here. Now I will say, um, the movie is full of cringe moments. Like it's hurting your soul types of moments of cringe. Not necessarily because the acting is bad, so to speak, more so because of the certain actions that the character takes that just makes you not feel good inside type of
Yeah, that's
actions.
true.
But through this article, this person has not only 13 most cringeworthy moments, which I'm not going to um obviously go over all of them. I'm going to read more of the short thing here. People are criticizing that Ben Platt's playing he's a 27-year-old playing a student. We can gloss over that. We already kind of dealt with that. It has also come under fire for an irresponsible portrayal of mental health issues. I don't know exactly what they're trying to go with that, but I will say something that was pointed out to me that I kind of understood and was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. We hear him saying that he has to write these letters to himself from his therapist. However, we never see him go to a single therapist appointment in the entire film.
It is implied through some of his actions and some of his mother's lines in the movie that he does go to therapy and that he has missed appointments, and it's implied that he goes, though there is never a scene where he goes in the movie, which is kind of sad. But also, I
Yeah.
do understand they are trying to make it a little bit of a shorter film, shorter
Ugh.
than the musical, like the Broadway show,
I
because
will.
they can't. Oh, sorry.
You continue. I'm gonna look up something real quick.
Okay. They can't fit all of the mental health issues that Evan, the character, is going through without it being rated higher than it is. Just because it does delve into suicide and depression and anxiety very harshly. And
Right.
it's it's an interesting portrayal in the movie, and it's an interesting portrayal in the musical, and it's a much harsher reality in the Broadway show because they can get away with it on stage. Because most people who go to see a Broadway show know exactly what they are going to see and know exactly what it's about, and they do have warnings. But in a movie format, you can't really have those warnings, and some people who have never heard of the Broadway show before and just hear about this movie, they're not entirely sure what it is. And they're not entirely sure what they're getting themselves into.
So we're talking about how, aside from the fact that there's ways they couldn't really go into certain parts because of the fact of it being a PG-13 movie and not a Broadway musical. Um, as regards to length being an issue, this movie was a 2 hour and 17-minute movie, and I looked up how long the Broadway is. The Broadway is only like 13 minutes longer.
That is true. But to
Although,
put it in an acting, like, movie format to where it's not just song after song after song after song, and having lines and scenes in between songs, it would have been a lot longer. And
so another, oh,
that's also probably why they did cut a few songs from the show that weren't in the movie.
now I will say I would not be surprised in the slightest if they filmed all those and they just decided to cut them for time being, because 2 hours and 17 minutes for a film that hardly anybody knows much about is a long thing to try to put them in a theater for 2.5 hours for. But I would not be surprised in the slightest if when they come out with it on like Blu-ray or something, they come out with like an extended version with more songs put into it.
I really hope they do, because some of the songs that they cut 3 songs in total,
And
are
those we will get into once we start talking about the differences
yes.
between
Yeah.
um
Those songs are some of the key parts of the show.
now they added songs to the movie that weren't even in the musical. So that's kind of like a interesting interesting thing to cut certain songs but put new ones in there that weren't ever there to begin with.
That is true. I did enjoy one of the songs that they added. The one that Alana, or however you pronounce her name, I think it is Alana or Elena. No, it's Alana. The song that she sang and the reprise of the song that she sang, I did enjoy that song. It was good. It was executed very well, and it made her more relatable than Evan.
Okay, that I'm reading something that this obviously critics not always 100% correct, but the way this person said that the song "If I Could Tell Her" has incestuous vibes to it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is definitely weird, but I wouldn't consider it that way, right? Or am I wrong?
You're not wrong. So, If I Could Tell Her is a song that Evan is singing to Zoe, which is Connor's sister. The way I can see it how it could be perceived as incestuous, but seeing as Evan never really knew Connor, it was just Evan pouring out his feelings to Zoe about how he felt towards her, and Zoe was just grieving the loss of her brother in a way that she knew how to cope because he wasn't the nicest to her. But Evan was telling her things that he thought she wanted to hear and used her older brother to portray that and to project that.
Right. The
But if
rest of
I
these, the rest of these that I'm reading, they're just so dumb that I
Mhm.
just can't even explain them.
If it's interesting how I can see both sides of it. It could be somewhat incestuous, but it also is just Evan telling his feelings to Zoe and her thinking it's from Connor instead of Evan.
I will say, as far as the story goes, I did not like the fact that our protagonist was actually uh he may have been dealing with a lot of serious mental health issues, which is understandable, and I can even attest that I've maybe not as extreme as he has. I do sometimes suffer, and I did suffer back in high school with some severe anxiety and social, being around people and talking to them and being able to say the right things. But the fact that we're supposed to care about him and let him off the hook, even though what he is doing is wrong, is that's where it starts to get really cringy. And besides that, the only parts I really liked, I did enjoy the musical numbers. Those were good, except for the ones that got weird.
That is true.
And while critics I don't align with completely, gave it a 33% at this moment right now. Audiences have given it a 90%, which, if I'm going to be fair, critics did not like The Greatest Showman either, but audiences loved it.
Mhm. That is true. A lot of audiences who do enjoy the musical side of cinema will enjoy this movie. Now, people who go to the theater for a story, they may enjoy it or they may not. There's no real middle ground for that. You either will enjoy it or you won't.
Yeah, and I will say, for anyone who thinks that the critics are correct and that they should trust them, first off, they do that for a living. That's how they make money. They're going to be super critical. However, that being said, most of them are critiquing movies. They don't watch musicals, so don't trust that they would understand what is a good or bad movie that is based off of a musical, because most likely they don't care for the musical either.
That is very true. They could just not care for musicals. Critics are there to rate movies. They are there to critique cinema, like cinematography, not necessarily the musical aspect of it, though. If you
Right.
wanted a real and true critique of this movie, I would honestly get someone from Broadway, like a Broadway critic, a theater critic, into it as well. And they could bounce ideas and critiques off of each other. So, like a cinematography critic and a theatrical critic.
Right. Now, there's one thing I do wonder. However, I don't know if you'll even be able to have the answer to it, of how much different the book and the musical are to the movie and the musical are to the book, or if it's somewhat close to the same.
So, the book, I have not read it in full. I've read summaries of it. I've been wanting to read it. The book and the Broadway show are much closer related, and you can tell that the show is based more closely off of the book than the movie is. Because the book is based off of a true story. This entire musical, whether it's the movie, the show, or the book, is based off of a true story of something that happened to one of the writers in high school. Now, he wasn't like the main character of it, but he did experience this. This was something real that happened while one of the creators of Dear Evan Hansen was in high school.
So what you're saying is that he experienced somebody who did not know someone who killed themselves and did all of this?
Yes. So one of the
That
creators,
is
yeah,
super messed up if that actually happened.
yeah, one of the creators was in high school when a kid had committed suicide under very similar circumstances as Connor in the musical. And there was a kid who claimed to know the kid who committed suicide and basically fed off of that attention.
That is awful.
It's a terrible thing to do, but it does happen. It's not as uncommon as you'd think.
Um, I am looking at seeing who actually wrote the book for um the Dear Evan Hansen, and I will say there is something interesting that I actually found out about this person.
Oh?
Um, not necessarily related to the Dear Evan Hansen novel. However, he did write his script was the Dear Evan Hansen script. So the book he wrote, he helped make the book into a script for the movie.
Well, that's a good thing.
Also, he has penned a screenplay for Lin-Manuel Miranda's film adaptation of a movie called Tick Tick Boom, which comes out on Netflix in about 2 months.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Oh, and just a little tiny thing for you, specific because I know you like Lin-Manuel Miranda based off of Hamilton. The movie that's coming out on Netflix is directed by him.
Ooh!
It's his directorial debut.
For a
So,
movie?
yeah.
Okay, because he wrote, directed, and starred in Hamilton.
Right. Well, this is his
His
push into
film
movies.
debut.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Makes
but
sense.
yeah, that'll be interesting. But back, so that'll be another podcast we can do if you want to watch that, and even though there's nothing really to talk about on it.
Sure.
But back to this. I see that this Broadway play actually was first debuted in 2015.
This is true.
Oh,
I
sorry.
was
It premiered in Washington in 2015, but it was on Broadway in 2016.
Yes. Yes. That is accurate. I remember that because I remember when it came out because I was starting high school. And that's
So
another thing about that. I heard of this show and I listened to the soundtrack for the first time while I was a freshman in high school, while I was going through all of those emotions. And at the time, before I even watched the show, I just listened to the musical or listened to the soundtrack of the show, and I related to it. And that I feel like that is something that a lot of teens in high school and young adults can get from this. They can get a sense of, oh, I can relate to that on a deeper level than just, oh yeah, I'm a little bit depressed. I'm a little bit anxious sometimes.
right.
It's something in the media that could change the education system, could change therapy. It could change a lot of things in our world as we know it right now towards mental health and furthering our study into mental health,
It's
which
just a good thing this. Oh,
I believe it's something important.
it's a good thing this play didn't come out like earlier in like the early 80s or 70s of, because then this probably would have been seen as a psychiatric patient instead of a mental health issue.
That is true because statistically, high school students now, on average, have the same amount of social anxiety and just anxiety in general that would put people into mental institutions in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, it's not great. Um, so you said Jordan Fisher is
Yes.
playing Evan Hansen, right? In like the
Yes,
more
he is.
recent. Well, I have a feeling he will not be playing him very long.
Oh?
Well, he is now a main character in a CW show as of this year, and I'm going to assume he may be able to do it when he's not filming that, which might be 6 months out of the year, but he's going to be less able to.
They do rotate the touring cast a lot. They will most
Right.
likely just have to audition another Evan.
Well, I see that there's four different. He's in one of four different people who's played Evan Hansen on cast replacements.
I think I did hear that somewhere. They normally do cast more than one person, not necessarily like understudies,
Mm-hmm.
but Broadway shows do like they have several shows every single night. And you can't expect an actor to perform 3 or 4 shows 7 days a week. So they do have multiple actors playing the same role just to give some of the larger named actors a chance to get some rest.
So I'm reading something here, based like a character list of the play. Um, they did not tell us they did not give us any notion whatsoever in the movie that Evan's mother was a paralegal, like went to paralegal school at night. I'm sorry. That was completely cut out.
That was completely cut out. In the show, she went to school. In the movie, she was a nurse working late shifts.
So not a nurse aide.
She It's not entirely clear what she does. It does say that she worked in a hospital. It does show in a single scene that she worked in a hospital as a nurse. But other than one scene, one like 2-minute scene where it's a phone call between Evan and his mother, that she worked in a hospital.
Right.
But it's never really acknowledged other than that one time.
All right.
It's
Well,
it's
since
acknowledged that she's never around though.
to finish off um the movie in general, because we're obviously already heading in the direction that I'm wanting to go into with the differences, like key differences between the movie and the musical. Overall, what did you think of the movie?
Overall, I thought it was a decent movie. I thought it was executed very well for a like stage to film movie adaptation of a Broadway show. I thought it was decent. I I saw the differences and they bugged me, but I also saw the things that they added, which was kind of nice. But just overall, in general, I thought it was a decent movie.
Okay, so like out of like 1 out of 5 broken arms in a cast, what would you rate it?
1 out of 5 broken arms in a cast.
Yeah,
Probably
the
like
best I could come up with on the spot.
probably like a 3.
I'd have to go as a movie standpoint. In not having seen the musical or was tried to avoid the soundtrack at all costs before the movie because I wanted to go into it fresh, unsuccessfully, mind you. Um, I would have to say that besides the cringy moments, the musical numbers, the enjoyability, the fact that it got me to actually tear up a couple times, which you have to be a good movie in some sense to be able to do that. I'm not that emotional of a person. Um, I'd have to probably give it right around. You said what? You had 3.5 or three?
I gave it a 3.
I'm gonna go a little bit higher. I'm gonna go like 3.5 broken arms.
Okay.
Um,
So like a
so
broken and a sprain.
eh, bro- 3 broken arms and one that's broken, but they don't have insurance, so they're not getting a cast.
Okay.
I mean, the kid's in high school. Come on now.
Yeah, that is true.
Um, the one last thing I wanted to say about this was I'm gonna have to have you talk a little bit about the differences while I try to figure out what I was gonna say.
Okay. So one of the big main differences in the movie versus the show, the cast. Obviously, they cast Ben Platt, who is the original Evan Hansen, but they didn't cast any of the other cast members from the show, which I found extremely odd, but also understandable. Another really, really big thing was the songs that they cut. They cut Anybody Have a Map, which is a song between the two mothers, the mother of Evan and the mother of Connor. And it's basically just them saying, like, how do I do this? And it's the opening number of the show, which I was very surprised that they cut, even though they did add it in a band way. Like in the beginning of the movie, there was like a pep rally and they played the instrumental of it, but it's the opening number of the show. And they didn't put it as a big enough role as that song actually is. Another one was Good For You, which is a song with all of the cast pretty much attacking Evan when they found out that he was lying the entire time. And it was pretty much just like a kick in the face to Evan in the show. And it's a very important song because it's the realization that he messed up. He messed up big time.
I'm gonna interject just for a second. Not to confuse anyone, it is not the song by Olivia Rodrigo. It is
That is true. It is
completely
not the
different.
song by Olivia
But
Rodrigo. It is a
if I
different
have to
song
be honest,
altogether.
without listening to that version, I feel like they both have a good tone that are similar. Would I be wrong in saying that?
A little bit. One of them is about a breakup and
Right,
calling somebody a psychopath, and the other one is just
but both are
Evan
attacking the person, right?
somewhat in some sense.
I
In,
before you get back to, I actually just remember what I was gonna finish off my other
okay.
thing with. It took me a second, and this actually, I guess, can go into the differences without having seen the musical. I
Mhm.
felt like the movie having that put into a movie form with a bigger budget than just a Broadway play where they have stages and they have props and things like that. You can actually go on location to some of these places and have a bigger set piece to kind of immerse it more.
It's true. But in the show, they did have like projector screens showing different scenes. They also had set pieces, props, and most Broadway actors, actually no, all professional Broadway actors know how to portray emotions bigger. That's something very huge in theater. Like your emotions, your facial expressions have to be bigger. They have to be more pronounced so that people can tell, like, oh, this person is angry, oh, this person is sad, oh, this person is really happy. Because there's no background music, there's no camera right in your face. The audience, even from like the very, very back of the theater, has to see those facial expressions and has to see those tiny little details that Broadway actors are trained to do.
I will definitely say I've never seen Broadway before, so I personally can't. The only thing that I have reference to is watching Hamilton on Disney Plus, but I don't think that's the same.
It is the same, pretty much. Yes, they had a camera in their face, but they still had to perform in front of a live audience. They had to make those gestures, those facial expressions bigger. They had to project their voices more, even though all of the cast was mic'd. They all had mics. So even though they could be heard, they are still taught to project their voices so it gives that more emotional feel.
Right.
And if you pay attention to Hamilton the way I do, you can tell that they are performing for an audience, not necessarily for the camera. And that's the big difference between film and theater. The performance, because if you're watching somebody act on screen, you don't have to you don't I don't know how to word this. You don't have to try as hard to make it look like a conversation. Like over the phone, you don't have to make it look like you're super energetic about this one thing that you're talking about on the phone, because you can hear both sides of the conversation. But if you're on the phone in a Broadway show, you have to make your expressions more exaggerated so that people can get the sense of what's going on.
Now, I'm reading something here while you're talking about that. There was an extended album of the Broadway that had come out like 2 or 3 years ago, where there were songs that were cut from the Broadway altogether. I don't know if you've listened to the deluxe album.
Do not know. I might have.
Well,
I
there's
listen to a lot
songs.
of stuff.
There's okay. Well, this deluxe version had things like Katy Perry's rendition of "Waving Through a Window," plus a recording of "Part of Me," the precursor to "You Will Be Found," performed by current Broadway company.
Oh, interesting.
In the Bedroom Down the Hall, "Disappear," uh, yeah, "Hiding in Your Hands," "Oblivious."
Okay. I have listened to that.
Okay, well, that's just something to notice on. Is there is certain things that were actually not even in the original Broadway itself.
Mhm.
But I'd just interject that.
I appreciate that.
I was trying to look and see if they're going to come out with an extended cut of the movie, but not finding anything.
I guess we will know when it is released.
Yeah,
I would
which will be sooner than we think, considering that the theatrical window is only 17 days, which is not great.
Yeah, that is true. Would you like me to continue with the differences?
Please do.
Okay. Another song that they did cut was "Break in a Glove," which is basically the stepfather of Connor talking to Evan about like what having a dad is, in a sense, because like dads and sons, they play catch. They put on a baseball glove and they throw around a ball and they break in a glove. I personally don't think that song is necessarily important to the integrity of the show. It's a good song and it gives the actor who played the father a good chance to show his emotion with Connor's death. But I don't really think that it's very important to the integrity of the show. And then the last one that they cut was Disappear, which
Oh yes, I'm seeing that there.
mhm, that song is all of the songs that they cut are important to the story in their own way. But Disappear is one of the more emotional ones where it's literally Evan asking like what would happen if I were to just disappear and having Connor saying what would happen if I disappeared.
Now, I am reading something here to help you with that one specifically. There's a thing here that talked about how they changed by shrinking the role of Jared, which if I'm remembering correctly, that's his family friend, right?
That's the family friend.
And then it says expanding upon the character of Alana. That's how you
Mhm.
say it, right?
Yeah.
Making the latter the one who starts the Connor project with Evan joining in to help, which explains the cutting of Disappear and material involving Evan seeing visions of Connor, telling him to push forward with the lies and keeping his memory alive.
Yeah. I mean, I personally loved Jared's character in the show. He was a big part of the show and he pretty much just disappeared halfway through. He showed up maybe once or twice, but he was there for comic relief in some scenes. And his character felt very, very forced.
I I really felt like um he Jared as a character, at least in the movie, I don't know if it's any different with the musical, but I just felt like it wouldn't have changed how he acted if he was there or not. Jared didn't even seem like he liked him.
That is true. But I still feel like Jared is a very important character because Jared was considered the comedic relief in the show as well as in the movie. The show did a very, very good job with balancing like oh, this is kind of funny, but also a very serious message.
Well,
They
also the fact, though, good.
they in the musical they did a very good job balancing that, but in the movie it was more just a very serious message. They didn't have as much humor.
I I feel like they really proved that he wasn't much of a friend, in my opinion.
He really
Well,
wasn't.
well, for the fact of the matter that what Connor was doing, or what Evan was doing was wrong, and to ask him to do emails that looked like him and Connor were best friends, a good friend would have not let him do that in the first place.
That is true. Jared was never meant to be a good friend.
Yeah, but then again, we wouldn't have had a musical or a movie if he didn't say yes.
Yeah.
And it was trying to prove, I guess, that Connor really doesn't have any friends.
That is true. That's something that the movie and the musical do have in common. Connor was never really a character
No.
as much.
Now, would you say that Connor in the movie, they actually delved more into him and you kind of had more appearances from him than what you even got with the musical? Like, did they really have any interaction between him and Evan before he died? Other than
Not
like the letter situation.
not really before they died. In the show, they portrayed him more as somebody who was being like not abused, but like tortured. He was torturing himself. In the
Mhm.
movie, he was literally just an abusive bully. He was just being a bully,
Being a bully
but
because of the way his life was going.
but
Like,
because of the way that he felt inside.
yeah.
But in the show, there is a lot where Connor's a lot bigger of a character in the show. He had a more significant role because Evan ended up seeing visions of him and like you said, encouraging him to keep the memory alive even if it was a lie.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of rather would have had that in the movie, but I could understand because if it had happened in the movie, I don't think I would have felt nearly as terrible, or I wouldn't have felt as conflicted about
Mhm.
being sympathetic towards the main character if he was having these visions, because then it's like really proving a point of there is something seriously wrong with this guy. He needs help.
Yeah.
Not not he needs help, but I don't feel really that bad for him because he's doing this stuff regardless. Like it's just his own volition of doing it because he wants to be selfish and he wants to feel liked, which I can understand, but at the same time you just don't feel that bad about him.
Oh yeah. Another thing that's like super different is that like at the end of the movie everyone finds out what Evan did
Because he chooses to let it be known.
because but in the show nobody ever finds out. The Murphys
Really?
keep it a secret. The Connor's family keeps it a secret. Evan keeps it a secret. And
Yeah, something. Oh,
he ends up getting he ends up getting let off the hook
now
for a lot of his stuff.
I am reading that on here. Uh, Ben Platt himself said that they altered the film's ending to like as a kind of extended third act where we get to see a little more of his repentance and redemption and the work he does to subsequently make amends and really get to know who Connor was and try to help the family heal. Not off the hook as much as he was in the musical, where you've been sitting in a theater for 2.5 hours and you just kind of want to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But to be fair, if
Um,
they did that, the movie wouldn't have really ended at all. And it probably would have probably pissed more people off if that ended like that.
yeah. And there is a scene at closer to the end of both the musical and the movie where Evan and his mother have a very heartfelt conversation. But in
So
the
big, so
show,
small.
yes, but that song is not in the movie or in the show. The show jumps to Evan and Zoe in the orchard just talking.
Right.
And the movie gives Evan like a chance to get to know Connor, like really get to know Connor. But in the show, he never did that. He didn't do that, and well, he didn't do that on stage anyway. And he never sent the family a flash drive of Connor's song in rehab.
Right.
That happens in the movie, but that doesn't happen in the show.
Interesting. Apparently there's another song that we didn't even know. Wait, hold up. Was the song Oh wait. The song If I Could Tell Her was in there, right?
Yes, it was. That was the song that people are talking
Oh,
about it being
someone
incestuous.
someone thought that that would be cut from the movie for the two new songs that which I think I'm finding out here Ben Platt actually co-wrote those new songs that were put into it.
Mhm.
That's impressive.
It is. I
Now, granted,
personally
probably wouldn't go back through and listen to the soundtrack over the other
I
one.
I am on the fence about the movie soundtrack because I personally like the songs that they cut because I let those Anybody Have a Map is one of my favorite songs from the show and they just completely cut it. It's the opening number and they completely cut it. They put the instrumental in there. They also put the instrumental for Good For You in there, but like they completely cut them both out of the show or out of the movie. And those are two very important songs because not only in Good For You, is it the moms attacking Evan. It's also the father, it's also Jared, it's also Zoe, it's also Alana. Like, it's all of them are like, hey, you did this for attention? What the heck, man?
So
And it's a call-out song. And it's a great song.
I found something here
Uh-huh.
that regards to the casting Platt as the lead role.
Uh-huh.
There was accusations of nepotism. I don't know how to say that. It's basically nepotism because his father produced the film. In an interview with someone named Zach Sang, I guess. It's a radio DJ. Ben Platt said this, and this kind of almost makes me feel I don't know, conflicted about this. He said, I think the reaction is largely from people who don't understand the context of the piece. The fact that I created the role and workshopped it for nearly 3 years. Were I not to do the movie, it probably wouldn't get made. And so I think my defensive response is to want to go on Twitter and be like, F you guys, you don't even know this. You don't even know that this wouldn't exist without me. Of course, that's not true entirely and not my place to say. All I have to do is let the work speak for itself.
See, I can see where he's coming from because he did play Evan for 3 years. He played Evan for the longest time out of everybody else who was cast as that character. And he made the character who he is.
I get that.
Because
But to want to go on a defensive response if he did not get cast, to say F you guys,
that's a little bit harsh.
I guess he's also trying to be criticism about his age because when they first released the trailer back in May, it sparked criticism of him. And he said, viewers commenting that he looked too old to play a teenager, which then he responded with, well, I'm the same age as those guys who played high school students in the film Grease.
That is very true. The oldest person who was in the cast of Grease was in his 30s.
Okay. I will say this, though. I don't know if I would say was Broadway as prominent today as it was in like the 70s? Or was there a lot of young, talented people who could look that young or pass for that and be in a movie musical that they were going to push with relatively unknown actors?
There weren't a lot of actors that were young because there was a lot of criticism in Hollywood around the 70s when Grease did come out. Not only on Broadway, because it was originally a Broadway show, but in the film Grease. In Hollywood, there was a lot of controversy around hiring child actors because there was a lot of laws where their parents had to be there or they could only work this amount of time before they needed to leave. And to hire child actors in the 70s was very, very difficult because they had to work around all those laws, and to cast a child, even if that child is 17, as a main character was extremely difficult because a lot of those actors had to work really, really long days. Because it's a musical and you have to do dancing and you have to get it right. Every single person in a singular scene where there is dancing or there is a flash mob, they have to be in sync. They have to be completely and totally in sync for them to even consider putting it in the film. So actors had to do take after take after take of the same exact dance and work really, really, really long hours. So they legally, most likely, could not hire child actors to play those main roles.
Right. So that's where I kind of take away the criticism on that.
Yeah, definitely. And like in Grease, I know we're not really talking about Grease, but like in Grease, Kaneki, who is like the most sexual character of the T-Birds, He was in his 30s. And he looked extremely young, but also at the same time, he looked very old.
Yeah, I will say I can't really speak for anything that you're talking about with Grease because I have never watched it.
Shocking.
I can't tell if that's sarcasm or not.
It is shocking because it's a very famous show, musical.
I'm only just getting back in, or I'm only just getting into musical movies. Let alone it's going to be a slow process. Also, I can't look at John Travolta and go, yeah, he definitely looked like a teenager back then. And
He
also, I think
didn't.
I've seen certain like scenes from the movie, and I just
Mhm.
it's rough. I know it's a '70s movie, but some of the choreography sucks.
It really does.
I'd rather go watch West Side Story again.
Olivia Newton-John, who was the one who played Sandy in Grease, was the youngest cast member, and she was 17. And that's
Jesus
why she
Christ.
didn't do a lot of dancing. For a main character, she was not in the movie that much.
Because of those laws, probably.
Because of the laws. She was not in the movies a lot. She didn't do a lot of dancing. She had a few songs that were just her, but
Yeah,
she didn't have to be there for the entire time
right.
because I believe she was 17. Let me fact check that before I say that.
Um, let me see here. So is that pretty much all the differences between the musical and the movie that you could tell?
Pretty much, yes. Also, I lied. She was not 17. I lied about that. I apologize. She was 29.
Oh, that's a big difference.
Yeah. But she honestly wasn't in it a lot. A lot of a lot of the actors in Greece were very, very old. I believe the youngest cast member was um ah, member in Greece. The youngest cast member was she was in her 20s. I'm trying to remember which one she played.
So while you're doing that, I'm gonna delve back into probably the most difficult part of this episode that's gonna be to talk about. But we're gonna segue kind of into it with talking about Connor and mental health that they show in the movie. And for anyone that's listening, that there's a message within the movie that is something that needs to be heard more about and more spoken with. If things seem really rough in your life, like you got no one to turn to, or you feel all alone and just feel like the world's crumbling down on you, there are other avenues to take than to try to kill yourself. I know
There's always someone to reach out to.
there are hotlines that I wouldn't necessarily say as your like I'd say that's like your last like solution. I wouldn't go to that first necessarily unless there's no one else to talk to. Um for people in high school, because we're dealing with a movie that's in high school, I'm not sure how well counselors can help with certain things. But if you really just don't trust your parents in terms of talking about that kind of stuff, counselors could be a first avenue to talk to.
If
'Cause-
you are struggling with mental health and you cannot talk to your parents about it, or you can't afford to get therapy, there are apps that you can get on your phone that are free and you can talk to people anonymously about your struggles. And if you are self harming and you are thinking about suicide, from my own personal experience, I would not go to school counselors because they are legally obligated to tell your parents if you are thinking about killing yourself. So if you feel unsafe about talking to your parents about this kind of stuff, I would not trust a school counselor. That's just me, though. That's how my high school worked. I'm not sure how it is around the rest of the US, but that's how mine worked.
Well, I will say, in terms of having thoughts like that, I think any school counselor, if you were to go to them, or even a therapist or a doctor, if you were to go to any of them that are like they're professionals, they have an legal obligation to make sure that you do not harm yourself. And that's
True.
not necessarily a helpful thing to say, because if someone truthfully wants to do that, then there's little you can I wouldn't say there's little you can do to help somebody like that, but for a lot of people, it's not necessarily that they want to die, it's that they feel so bad they want to, and they want to have someone say, like, a message as in, hey, please, somebody help me. I need help. I need somebody.
High school students who suffer with depression and anxiety, who are thinking about killing themselves, they just want to be heard. They want to be seen, they want to be heard. And with giving these options that are available to everyone, like free therapy online, free anonymous therapy, school counselors, everything. They that's why they are there. They are there to help you. And if you do feel safe enough to talk to your parents, then talk to your parents. Because having that open line of communication is a really good thing. But most teens who consider suicide, they don't really want to end their lives. And sometimes they do. But they don't really want to, they just want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want to be validated, because everyone's feelings are valid, but sometimes you don't feel that way. Sometimes you feel like your feelings are just nothing.
Now, in terms of while I'm talking about um my side on certain things, do you think you could figure out what's the anonymous free app you're talking about, in case, to talk about it, or at least, you know, mention it, so that way people can go to it if they decide that they need it?
Yes, the one that I personally used was called 7 Cups. It was an app that you can get on Android and iPhones, and it generates a random username, and there are people who are certified to listen. They are certified listeners, and they will listen to you, and they will ask if you just want somebody to listen to you, or if you would like advice. I used it, and the people on there, the listeners, really helped me. They made me feel heard. They made me feel supported. And there are also options on there where it will track your growth. You fill out a little like 5-minute questionnaire every day talking about how you're feeling, how you're doing mentally, how you're doing physically, have you eaten, have you been drinking water? They ask you that sort of thing, and if any of those answers are no, they will automatically connect you to a listener. I personally enjoyed my experience on that app. Hated the circumstances that it was under, but the people on there are genuinely kind human beings, and they are there to help you.
So, me not really having having money to have a therapist, because that stuff's expensive. As a working adult, that is an expensive avenue not to go down, which, isn't something great for someone who has mental health issues, but, it happens. Sometimes you just got to do the work yourself, and sometimes you have to have the strong will to do it, regardless of the circumstances. But I will definitely say that I've dealt with a depression mainly since I was in high school because I'm I'm a kid, or well, I was a kid who was not the best looking or the best dressed or coming from a good family to be able to not be bullied in high school or in middle school, and it really drains you after a while. It's a lot of building up, and it just is a heavy burden to carry after a while if you can't find a way to talk to someone about it.
That is true. It can be very, very difficult, and it can build up, and you can bottle it up, or you can talk to people about it.
Yeah. Um, I am going to check on something real quickly because it smells like something in my house is burning. So, if you want to talk about some of your experiences, I will be right back in just a second.
Okay. For
I'll keep
anybody.
you listening.
Okay. For anyone who is listening to this and is sensitive to talks of suicide, I know there was a warning at the beginning, but I would just like to reiterate, if you are triggered by suicide, self-harm, please, please click away. I don't want to trigger any viewers, any listeners. When I was in the 8th grade, I was transferred into a public school from being homeschooled. And from being homeschooled, from being in a private school to being homeschooled to being in a public school. And it was a very, very tough transition because it was 8th grade. The last year of middle school, I was transferred into a public school. And I didn't know how to cope with anything, and I started to self-harm. Just so I could feel. I wanted to be able to feel something other than being numb. And eventually, my parents did find out, and they reacted in a not so good way, which furthered my trip down the rabbit hole into self-harm and thoughts of suicide, and it furthered my depression. And I honestly just wanted somebody to talk to so I could feel something. And growing up as a depressed, anxious, queer kid who was raised in a very conservative, very religious household just furthered that depression and furthered that self-hatred that I had. And entering high school, it didn't get any better. I did start seeing a therapist, but it wasn't getting any better because it was supposed to be conversion therapy more than stuff for my anxiety and my depression. And sadly, my sophomore year, I attempted suicide because that's what I thought was best. And thankfully, after those attempts, I I I'm still here. I failed those attempts.
And I'm glad for that because you are a very good friend to me. And
I'm honestly also glad that I'm still here. I'm still here to be able to share my story because I'm living proof that things do get better. And though being diagnosed with depression and anxiety and bipolar disorder, I still I'm still fighting my mental illness every single day. And some days are harder than others, and some days are really, really easy. And masking it gets easier. It's not a good thing, but sometimes it's what's necessary so that you can survive in the world that you live in. And like I said, some days are difficult. Some days almost impossible to get out of bed. Some days it's crippling. And then other days it's somewhat manageable. And then on like my like super high up days, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel fantastic, I feel great. And then everything just comes crashing back down. But it does get better.
I couldn't agree more with that.
It gets better, and I know it's not the ideal thing to say, because in the moment it will feel like you want to just give up. You want to end your fight. But every single person deserves the world. Every single person who's going to listen to this, and even the people who aren't going to listen to this, all of you deserve to be happy. And everyone deserves to be loved and to be cared for. And even if you don't feel like there's somebody there who cares for you and somebody who's there who's going to listen to you, there's always someone. Always. And it may not seem like that, but there is. Don't give up the fight. I attempted to give up, and now I'm a stronger person because I didn't. I'm still in the process of fighting, but it does get easier. And you do slowly realize that the people who say they care about you actually do. And with severe anxiety, you feel like you're a burden to everybody, and you feel like nobody's actually there and everybody's judging you. But the real friends that you have and the real family that you have chosen or that you were born into are there for you. My chosen family, Jay included, I know will always be there for me no matter what. And I'm super thankful for that. Even though I do have my days where I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm just being a burden. If you ever feel like that, you're never a burden to anyone at all. And the only thing I really have left to say is keep fighting your fight, because it does get easier and it does get better, and there's so much out there in the world that is beautiful. And it's hard to find the good stuff because it's few and far between. But if you look for that good stuff on a daily basis, it gets easier to spot, it gets easier to find. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm not saying the world is all puppy dogs and rainbows, but if you find the little things that bring you joy, it can work miracles. And Jay can attest to this. Earlier tonight, I was having a really rough time. And I saw the skyline of the city that I live in, and most of the buildings were yellow. The lights on top of them were yellow. And that's my favorite color. And it brought me so much joy. It's the little things that can get you through some of the toughest days. So I'll leave off with this. Keep fighting your fight, because it does get better.
I'm uh trying to formulate words here. Um that was really well spoken. I really do thank you for sharing, you know, your thoughts and your personal experiences that you've had. Um, what I was going to delve into as well, just to kind of reiterate some of the things you were saying. I don't know if I can word it better than what you did, um, but delving into some of my experiences with, you know, dealing with the bad days. Like I said, I've been dealing with depression for most of the last several years, and I won't say all of it. I had moments where, you know, I just, or days or even weeks where I just found it really hard to get out of bed. But I would say majority of the last 4 years, I've had things in my life happen that just pushed me to a breaking point. And after, I would say, there's about a dozen times or so where I have actively tried to end my own life, whether it's slitting my wrists or, and there is trigger warning here because, I mean, nothing's pretty about suicide. I know people say it's a cowardly thing, and honestly, it is not something cowardly. It is someone who, if they are actively trying to do something like that, they're not being cowardly. They are trying to end a pain in a way that, as painful as it is to try to do something like that, it in their mind at that moment is less pain to try to do that and more of a temporary pain than to continue with the pain that is their life at that moment in time.
And it's an end of the pain.
And while I will say there has been times within that dozen that I wasn't necessarily trying as hard, it was more of a, I want to feel something painful that could but won't unless I try my hardest. More so just to feel physical pain because my emotional pain is too much. Or I've just didn't see another option. And the thing is, none of them worked because ultimately I'd rather be alive than to be dead at this point, and I'm glad that I have not managed to make any successful attempts
I'm also
because one, the temporary issue I had with a we will say person that shall never be named, but if I'm going to be quite honest, a manipulative bitch that I had in my life. Uh, a lot of that pain and wanting suffering that caused me to want to die or kill myself is the same thing. Uh, was caused by this person who I had thought was my best friend, who I had developed lots of feelings for, and one-sided at that. So a lot of that was me emotionally thinking, well, I'm never good enough for this person. I'll never find anybody. And regardless of the fact, I just had to wait it out because eventually saw the person's true colors and they are no longer in my life. So that problem has been solved and I didn't need to die for it to end. I just needed to push it through and just hold steady, and life will eventually get better in certain senses.
yeah.
Let's see. What else could I say? Trying to find ways to say things that Kai has already said, but in a different sense. But I'm struggling, honestly, to find anything better worded than what they said. Um, but no. Every day is going to be a challenge. It's up to you to find, even if it's not waking up in a good mood. You just find one thing. This is something that I know has been said a lot to people, but it honestly does work. If you can keep a journal or even think in your own head one positive thing about the day, and I'm not talking about, oh, you have a roof over your head, be grateful of that, or you know, you get to wake up every morning, you're healthy. Those things, I'm going to be honest, those don't help. That's not, I mean, maybe to some it might, but not everyone is going to have a roof over their head. They got to think differently to make themselves in a more positive situation. Just find one good positive interaction or one positive thing that you can do in a day and try to take that and run with it. What else can be positive? What else can you find that is positive in a day that is not something that you just automatically are told to think positively about?
Yeah, and sometimes it's even, I got up today. I did something productive today. I ate a meal today. I drank water today. Like those little things are big achievements for people who are dealing with mental illness and people who are neurodivergent. Like just eating a single meal in a day can be super difficult for somebody, for a lot of people. And celebrating those small but so important achievements is a big deal and a great way to start your journey to not recovery, but to just getting better and finding healthier ways to deal with your depression and your anxiety. It's healthier just to say, I drank a glass of water. I got out of bed. I went for a run. I hugged my dog.
I took a shower.
Exactly. Because some of those things can be super difficult. Like it's difficult to get out of bed some days. It's difficult to do the basic things that your body needs to live. But when you do those things, celebrate those small accomplishments because that could be all you do in a day. Just doing the basic needs that your body needs to function. Or like, I slept 8 hours last night. I slept the recommended amount of time for my age range. That's a big thing. That's a huge thing.
And I will say, this is something that most people probably don't think of as an accomplishment, even less so than the ones we just said. But be like, I managed to get up and do my laundry today. I got clean clothes now. I have clothes. Well, I can't say clothes on my back because that's another thing that I've heard while I was in my depressive states. And I was just like angry about, like, whoopee, I got clothes. That's not something to be excited or happy about.
Every little thing that you do to better yourself, even if it's just putting on clean clothes, is a super big accomplishment for someone who struggles with depression, who struggles with mental illness. Because some days it's hard. I've gone weeks in my depressive states where I've changed clothes maybe twice and I've showered maybe once. So, doing those small little tasks to make your body happy, to make yourself feel good, even if it's just for a short amount of time, are big accomplishments.
Now, I'll say there are certain things lately because I did go through a spell for a little while during the summer where I just found it hard to get out of bed. And while I will say this way of um getting rid of my depressive state or getting out of that is somewhat costly, I turned to Legos. I started building in Lego sets again, and to be honest, it doesn't help me deal with the depression that I'm dealing with, but at the time it wasn't about me dealing with the depression, it was about being in a better mood and state. And so if that meant that I got a Lego set and I built it, and for those couple of hours I focused hyper focused on building that thing and nothing else, that's what it took for me to be able to lift my spirits. That's what I did, although I wouldn't recommend Lego sets. As cool as they are, they're expensive as hell.
They are. And to those of you listening who don't struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts, but know somebody who is struggling, suicidal thoughts aren't just, I want to die. They can also be, I'm a burden to everyone. Nobody cares if I'm alive. I need a break from living for a little bit. I feel trapped in my life and I feel like I need a way out. There's no future for me. there's no future where I see myself. And some even are just like sleep doesn't even help anymore. Or some people find it as an escape. If anybody that you know, or if you are thinking those kind of ways, you matter. Let your friends, let your family who you believe is struggling, let them know that they matter and that you are there for them no matter what. Because suicidal thoughts aren't just, oh, I want to die, oh, I want to kill myself. Sometimes they're more what's the word I'm looking for? More concealed than that.
There's
More
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 hiding under the
cryptic.
surface,
Yeah, they can be
more
more
vague.
cryptic, more vague, exactly.
Um, hmm. we have included in the beginning of this podcast a way for if anyone, well, I mean it goes into it, but we have a way for you to like go if you really feel like you want to end your life to call the suicide hotline prevention center and see if you can't talk to somebody who might be able to help you, or even just someone to listen to what's going on, because sometimes all we need is someone who can listen to what is going on in our heads to kind of help calm us down and give advice maybe.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, if there is a way, because I don't know how you post these, but if there is a way that you can put my like Instagram or my Snapchat or some way to contact me, like if there's a way that you can add that in like a description, anyone who's listening who is struggling and just needs somebody to listen to them, reach out to me, reach out to a family member, reach out to a friend. I know to some people who are inevitably going to listen to this, I'm a complete stranger. But if you need somebody to listen to you at any time of day, I am up until like the ungodly AMs. If you need somebody to talk to, if there's a way that my Instagram can be put out into the universe, I am always there to listen.
Yeah, I think that's something that can definitely happen.
Okay. Yeah, but if anybody is listening to this and needs just somebody to vent to, I'm a friend to everyone. I treat everyone with kindness and respect. And if you need somebody to listen to you, if you need just somebody to talk to, if you need advice, I'm here. I'm here for everybody.
Yeah,
That's all I have to say.
they're definitely a great person to be able to reach out to if you need any help. And you can't talk, or you don't feel like you can talk to your friends about it, or talk to your family members about it, or just don't trust, um,
If you
talking
don't
to, or
trust somebody you know,
then trust a stranger who
yeah,
will
trust a
not,
stranger.
will trust a stranger to talk to, at least. I mean, really, that's kind of what talking to someone on a suicide hotline would be anyway.
That is true.
But you're not getting paid to do it. You're there to do it. You're not having to do it because you're getting paid to. You're doing it because you want to.
Yeah, I want to be a friend to everybody, and you don't have to give me your name. You don't have to give me your personal information. You can just like we can text, we can call, we can anything. I am there to listen. And if you would like advice, I will ask, would you like me to listen or would you like some advice? And whether you want it or not, that's how I will respond. So if you need somebody to talk to who you don't trust your friends, you don't trust your family, you don't trust a counselor at school, you can reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out and talk to me. Or I don't know if Jay's going to put his information down there, but if you need somebody to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out to somebody.
Yeah, I'll definitely put some links to some very helpful ways to reach out to people, and then I'll also put Kai's information in the description with her consent, so that way you have someone to talk to. I'd put mine, but as a dual podcaster and YouTube maker and working for Amazon delivery, I hardly have much time to be able to reach out as much. So I'd rather send you to someone who can listen to your urgent thoughts and needs.
And I'm not sure if you have an Instagram account solely for this podcast, but if you do, that could be linked. And
I'm still working on that.
Okay. If you ever do that, you can give me access, and if people want somebody to talk to, they can reach out through there, and one of us will answer, or somebody will answer. Maybe.
That's definitely something that I can do.
Okay. Awesome.
But with that being said, any closing thoughts? Because we're reaching probably about an hour and a half at this point.
Yeah. The last thing I have to say is, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Don't stop fighting.
Fight the good fight.
Yes. Also, Dear Evan Hansen, great show, decent movie. I recommend it.
Dear Evan Hansen, don't know about the show. Movie's all right. But yeah. That being said, as much as we both don't have like the best review for Dear Evan Hansen or giving it like, 2 thumbs up, we're both still planning on going to see it again next weekend. So
This is true.
But until a different time when I have something else to bring your expertise into, this has been Cinema on the Rocks, a very special episode. I did not mention that before. This is not part of the main
episode.
that as well. But this is not part of the main season that I've been doing so far. This is a special episode. I will post it for now to Apple Podcasts. I have to work on getting it to Spotify and all that. Hopefully by the time that this comes out, I'll have been able to figure that out. But until next time, it was a pleasure having you on here. Can't wait to do it again.
Thanks for having me.
And I will see you guys next time there's a podcast, which most likely will be in 2 days. But y'all have a nice night. Drink responsibly.